to Matt Williams' invite actually to Burnley the other night. It was a bit of a dreadful game. But
you two were doing that.
Yeah, we went there. But what was interesting, we walked
another
around.
New scarf.
When we walked, yeah, another one. When we walked around the ground, was that they had a bit of a fan zone there, only a bit of one, but it was interesting because it was full, wasn't it? It was full of people, quite a few people having a beer. They had a massive screen up, showing
all ages, wasn't there? Kids, football, shooting goals, there's pubs, there's tents up and everything, music, screens. I think we're going to Germany in the next few weeks, and that'll be interesting to see. Dad's been already, but to see how those fans are engaged before the match, 2 or 3 hours before, and also afterwards. And I know there has been some people on Aviva Matara who have said that wouldn't be something I'd be interested in, but I think
that's fine. It's not for everybody, is it?
If you've not seen it, I think it's something.
It will be for a number of people who otherwise wouldn't be around spending.
Fan representation. It's been, cards on the table. It's utter nonsense. Whoever's on that board, and it is. I remember when I did the Jeff Stelling walk over the summer from Blackburn to Blackpool. I was walking with the Oldham fan, who's the fan representative, and it's a very onerous job. I mean, he gives up 2 days a week to do that job. I think it ideally may well suit somebody who's retired or who's got a lot of time on the hands. And ideally, I'd like to see it being 2 rather than 1. But it's very, very important that they're elected, and it's very, very important that they're on a relatively limited term. I think it should be 2 years max. Interestingly, I think Swansea, when they used to have the rotation 2 years, but what the board actually did was when people had to go off out of to comply with the constitution, the Swansea board co-opted them on and kept them because they valued their input so much they didn't want to lose it, and that's great. I mean, Swansea had a unique opportunity because they were in an insolvency situation. They were able to pull the investors together, and they managed to. They had a lot of money that they'd raised to try and save it themselves, and they put that in, as did Oldham. Now, whether that's something we can do at Blackpool and actually get shares around the table, I don't know. But whether we've got shares or not, there's no reason why a new owner wouldn't want to galvanise all the goodwill and make sure that fans are. We've got to make sure. We've been campaigning for so long for football first and for fan representation that it would be very, very disappointing indeed if we don't end up with a minimum of 1, and I would say 2 people sat around that.
And they are going to take the fans' views on board.
The difficulty we've always got is that until we know who's actually interested in purchasing it, and we don't want to go in from and the problem is that if the oysters are selling, they may not care who they sell to, but we don't want to go out of the frying pan into the fire. But I think I'd be very, very surprised if any owner who comes in isn't interested in negotiating that. Because there's a massive, massive job to do. They've got a whole new club to construct. There's no commercial section to speak of. There's I think probably the one strong bit is the community trust. But that perhaps would need to be better integrated. There's a training ground to sort. There's that lost maybe not a generation, but half a generation of fans who need to be coaxed back, and why wouldn't you want to embrace an organisation? I'm talking about BST here because I think they're obviously the ones to take the lead. Why wouldn't you want to embrace an organisation that's been so dedicated to the fight, but at the same time doing all this other stuff as well, which they do, that you can actually harness the positive energy that they can create, and you will be the benefactor of that without actually having to put your hand in your pocket. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Could it potentially put someone off coming in and having to spend that money to get the commercial side in the training ground if that's happening? Could that maybe put some owners coming into Blackpool Football Club?
I think the training ground might because there's nothing there at the moment. But equally, you can rent somewhere in the short term. And that's what I think most of the time Blackpool up at Mysco, aren't they? And there's no reason in the short term why that couldn't continue. There's no reason why somebody couldn't approach Andy Pilley and say, "Will you rent us part of Poolfoot Farm?" I know it might stick in the claw with some, but equally they are the best facilities on the Fylde coast. We've previously trained at Fylde Rugby. There's no reason why that couldn't be looked at again. So there's all sorts of opportunities there. I think on the commercial side, I think whoever comes in as the next commercial manager come that day will have the easiest job on the Foul Coast, because I think he'll be fighting off people waiting to support the new regime, and it'll be you want the right person doing it, and you want that person to maximise what can happen. But as Scott was saying on the Foul Coast stuff with Christine and Andy, it shocks him when he goes into Blackpool how few advertising boards around the ground. If you go to Fleetwood or if you go to anywhere, the place is rocking with them, and it's only when you take a step back and go somewhere else that you realise how much sponsorship is going on everywhere. There's the appetite for it, but thankfully these businesses haven't been prepared to support the current regime, and we thank them for that, but we want them back as soon as we can.
Well, we've both been upstairs, haven't we, over the years? And you think what it was like at Blackpool when things were going well. There was the corporate side of it was packed, and obviously that's died almost completely over the last few years. So again, you've got a massive opportunity there to get businesses back, people paying good money, and again get your revenue streams up. I mean, you think we were talking about what we thought the crowd would be for that first home game when we've got new owners, and you think what we had when we were in the Championship. I know we're not in the Championship now, but you'd like to think it'd be over 10,000, and that we could maintain that even in League One with showing some ambition and intent, because that's what you want to see as a fan, that the owners, want the club to be as successful as it can be. I think you'd get thousands.
We said a five-figure crowd, didn't we? Like for the first game.
I think so, and also, I mean, the other thing is a little bit of a mixed thing for some people is what you do with away fans, because certain clubs like Wigan and Blackburn, and to name a couple, sustain their revenues by having a very, very large away section. And Blackpool is a rather unique town. We've got the ability to house a lot of away fans should we choose to do so. And particularly if that east is opened and or adapted again in some way. And so I've got my idea as to how it should be done, but others will have different ideas. And we've got a 17,000 capacity. If we can get 10,000 fans but have 4,000 away fans in,
it's every other week if you're playing in the Championship, isn't it? Because Blackpool away is the first fixture they look for. All these Yorkshire clubs, and
then all of a sudden, and particularly if you're trying to rebuild something, I don't think you can afford to say, well, we're only going to let 1,500 away fans in. I think now the flip side of that is, are you giving too much of an incentive to the away fans to try and get results at home? And I think there's a balance to be struck. But it hasn't traditionally done Wigan or Blackburn too much harm, that they've been able to almost throw the doors open and say, as many of you as you want can come. I mean, we've been the beneficiaries of that when we've gone to Blackburn in the past. And you see when they're in the Premiership, when they had a Liverpool, Everton or wherever, or Man City, Man United, they'd have 7,000 away fans there, and Wigan. We've seen the same at Wigan. So I think there's been so much damage done over the last 4 years, particularly to the local economy and to that particular area around in FY4, that anything that we can do to encourage people to attend Bloomfield Road. And I think there's so much goodwill for us with other fans. I don't think it would be a massive issue. We've seen that. I think that Portsmouth coming tomorrow. They're coming to join the remembrance service, and we've engendered a huge amount of goodwill over the last 4 years from what we've done on a national level. And I think we can embrace that. And Sam's been down to Portsmouth and seen the way they welcome away fans. And I think Blackpool could. Brighton do it, don't they? Brighton actively encourage away fans to come and put the local beers on and create the ambience by putting their colours in the away end. We can do all that and make Blackpool a fantastic away experience, where the first thing people look at and the away fixture is, which to a certain degree I think they do already, is when are we playing Blackpool?
Yep. That's what I could never get my head around with the previous owners, with the Oystons. The fact that it's such a unique opportunity, having Blackpool as your club, because it's the first fixture that a lot of away fans look for, because it's a huge day out and it's a huge money spinner for them. So it just doesn't make sense to me, a lot of this.
No, you want to embrace that. You should. Yeah. The football club should be offering away packages that involve a hotel and tickets and making money off that. There's all sorts of opportunities.
If only we were rich, we could put a bid in, couldn't we?
We might be able to. There's a fire sale on.
I've got about £5 in my pocket. What do you reckon? Cheeky one.
Or is this all just a ruse, do you think? Do you think they've got some dastardly plan, or is it just gone too far now for that? I mean, we did say, Nick, didn't we, that they'll have something up the sleeves, and it's
your first thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's because of what's gone on previously. Yeah. I mean, hopefully it isn't the case, and it is just like you were talking about before, Tim, with the timescales and some of those interest amounts. It makes me think maybe, it is genuine, and it needs to happen, and they're doing it because they've no alternative. But we'll find out over the coming weeks.
How can we put an estimated figure on the club, the whole asset base?
I think it's very.
15 million.
If you ignore all the periphery, if you just stick to
Bisons,
BFC,
players,
and don't forget Tom Finney's bust. There's an
angle grinded statue of Stan Mortensen.
Yeah. So we can. I think if we just look at the football ground and we look at the football team, there's always an intrinsic value to a football team. There's always a goodwill element, and whoever comes in will know that they'll be able to tap into that. My gut reaction is, and bear in mind, Valeri's got a mortgage on the South Stand anyway. That's separate to this judgment. I would say in the region of 20 million quid.
Right.
That would be my guess. But there's actually the Vlada loans are in. He's got 7.2 million charged on the South Stand, but some of those are the what they call the Vlada loans, which is part of that 4.5 million. So if you net that off, he's got 4.5 million still in the South Stand. So I would say net it's 15, and I think they'll struggle to get more than that because people know they have to get rid of it.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It's a buyer's market.
Right, so we've done an hour. Let's just start wrapping things up now. The live stream's gone off, can't get it back working, so hey ho. Right, let's just very briefly just touch on what's going on the pitch. Firstly, is this going to affect the team? I don't think it will, but that aside, how do we want this season panning out? I mean, now this news has come out, it's important that we stay as high as we can in the league.
Well, I think
not go down.
We always said if there was light at the end of the tunnel, you'd want them to do as well as they could, for any prospective new owner. So if it is genuine and we are going to get a new owner, then if we can be at the top of the table or round about the playoff positions come the end of the season, then it would be great to be in the Championship. Whether we will, I don't know. I think we'll have to see what happens in January as well. There could be a fire sale on the pitch. I mean, I've not seen anything to know whether there's much of any value in the squad. The flip is we could end up with having to play the youth team, because there could be, like I say, a fire sale on the pitch as well. So
to Leighton Orient at the back end of last season.
Yeah, so hopefully change can happen sooner rather than later.
Well, it depends on them doing the right thing by the club, really, doesn't it?
Well, I think you've got to assume that they won't.
Well, yeah.
Because anything better than that is a bonus. I'm quite sanguine, to be honest. Actually, somebody said something to me this week, and actually I think it resonated with me a bit. I was always of the view that I'd rather any new owners started off at a relatively low starting point, because you could then gather some momentum and build up and build on it.
Yeah.
However, being in the first division at the moment gives us that breathing space. I don't think there's any realistic risk of us going down this season. So even if the club find themselves in a Leighton Orient situation, or Pompey as they were when going back a few years, that won't kick until next year, by which time hopefully the club has been sold, and that gives us that little bit of breathing space. Because the one thing you don't want to do in this scenario is end up having the risk of going non-league like Orient have done. And that fact we got promoted last year, I think, gives us that breathing space.
Yeah.
And but I still am of the view that what goes on the pitch, to a certain degree, is irrelevant until the sale goes through. And all we can do as fans, nobody should be going back in until the ink has dried on the contract that sells the football club, because until then it could be a ruse to get people back in. And it could relieve pressure on them. And the last thing we want to do when you talked about having somebody in a corner. The last thing you want to do is let them get up and have another go. They're down and they need to stay down. And the only way Blackpool's going to move forward is the day that signature hits the contract and the club is sold.
So not up anymore. Still stands firm, and it's, as Tim just said, it's a more
important than ever.
Yeah, to keep it going. Right, just to close things off, there's a BST meeting tomorrow, which was called, I suppose, on the back of, it's an EGM, on the back of the court case result, but I'm sure even BST in the wildest dreams didn't expect this topic to be discussed tomorrow. It's a double whammy.
We maybe did it at the Hilton, I think.
I was just about to say, it's not that big either, is it? So 12:30 tomorrow at the Excelsior. I think safe to say we'll all be there.
I've got to be suited and booted because I'm involved in the remembrance service afterwards. So you'll see me all suited up.
Well, what are you doing, Tim?
Now you're going in corporate, really, aren't you?
I'm doing the. I've got to do the remembrance statement. The going down of the and all that business. Going down of the sun, and I've got to learn it yet.
Right. So that ends the podcast. I think we've done over now, so that's enough. Live stream went off again, with 20 minutes to go, but I'm sure it's the first time we'll iron these problems out anyway.
Hopefully we'll be doing a few more podcasts because we'll have last match review to do in the near future.
Funny things like that, and talking about the players and the squad and football news.
Phoenix from the Flames,
yeah. Got to stop paying attention again.
Right, so all remains to be said is thanks for listening, thanks for downloading, and I don't know when will we speak again. The next big news, I suppose, when those contracts are signed.
It's we can't leave it too long. We need to get this going regularly again, I think.
Yeah, well, the gear's all set up anyway, so thanks for downloading, thanks for listening, and up the pool.
Up the pool.
Out. Oh, that clips then.